Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Chaps Chat Cats. We are a part of the Hoops Crew Media Network. My name is Jake, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by Sambo and Johnny. How are you, chaps?
Pretty bloody fantastic. Yourself?
Good. Sambo?
Yeah, good. I'm good. I just only just for some reason after what episode is this? What episode number is this? Bloody
Only like
400 or something.
170.
I really, I really only just noticed you introduce me as Sam or Sambo every week, and yet I've still got Principal Rig as my for anyone watching the video show. It's still got people just have to figure out which one's Sam by process of elimination. Go, well, he said he's Jake and he's John, so that must be him.
It just I noticed it about 235 episodes ago, and then I didn't correct it for
you don't want to mention things too early.
No,
you want to give it a good 235.
No. About episode 315.
Yeah,
and then I guess that just gets too awkward. So then you
That's
just
right.
have to wait for that person to
Does.
bring it up themselves.
which I've now done, and I
Exactly.
still haven't changed. I'll do it in another 315 episodes.
We can use that to celebrate episode 300. Speaking of what's on the episode tonight, Cats v Bulldogs, round 4 recap. That is what we're going to be getting into in the public part of the show. And then for our Patreon subscribers on the Hoops Crew, we're going to talk about the month in review. So the 4 games that we've played to start the season, we're going to go back over our thoughts on them, reflect on the season so far. So if you want to hear that part of the show, if you want to watch that part of the show, go on over to the Hoops Crew, start your 7-day free trial. And if you like it, stick around, join either the $5 or the $6 tier, and away you go. Extra extended podcasts, early access shows, Patreon exclusive content like VFL men's and women's coverage, just to name some of the stuff that goes on there. But let's get into it tonight. Chaps, the Cats v Dogs. The Cats travelled over to Adelaide Oval for the second time in 3 weeks. They didn't play a local Adelaide side. They played the Western Bulldogs. In an interesting old game, the Cats got out the blocks with the first 3 scores of the games, 2 behinds, and then Jack Bowes, a brilliant snapping goal after 14 minutes and 9 seconds. We thought, might be on here. Well, the Dogs basically snapped straight back. Within 30 seconds, Harvey Gallagher, they added another one 3 minutes later. Cody Waitman had a behind to Harvey Gallagher. They nearly had 3 in a row, but they didn't. They kicked 2 in a row. The Cats then answered with 2 of their own. Zach Guthrie gave me sort of Andrew Mackie vibes. Hand pass off. I can't remember who hand passed it to him, but he was running on the paint of 50, set sail. I called it before it even left his boot. Chaps, I said, goal. And he went bang, and through the big sticks it went. Tyson Stengel followed up shortly, and the Cats had a 3-3-21 to 2-1-13 lead at the first change. The Dogs, the first 2 goals of the second quarter through Sam Darcy and Jamara Ugle-Hagan. The Cats respond with 2 of their own. Max Holmes, bang, from 55 out with room to spare. Jeremy Cameron followed up after 15 minutes of the second quarter. The Dogs respond through Sam Darcy, but the Cats get 2 in a row via the boots of Ollie Dempsey, Stevie J-esque creativity around the goal mouth, and then Jack Bowes with a clutch set shot. Riley West gold for the Dogs just before halftime, and that left the game poised with a 9-point gap. The Cats up 7-6-48 to 6-3-39. Doggies got the first of the third term through Tom Liberatore. But chaps, the third quarter for me held a really important set of numbers. After Liberatore's goal, Jeremy Cameron goal, followed by Brad Close, followed by Tyson Stengel. First time in the match that any team had kicked 3 in a row. The Dogs answered with 2 of their own, but then the Cats got the next 3. So that was twice in the third quarter. And the only 2 occasions in the game up to that point where a team had kicked 3 goals straight, and it was the Cats both times. The Dogs the last 2 of the quarter, but they turned for home, trailing 11-5-71 to Geelong's 13-9-87. The Cats opened the scoring in the final term. And although the Dogs kicked the last 3 goals of the game, the only time that they would kick 3 in a row for the night, Cats had done that twice in the third term. And on balance, ran out deserving winners 14-11-95 to 14-7-91. A close game. Sambo, I'll come to you first. A close game, but a strangely paced event.
Yeah, and just a strange vibe, I guess. I guess we've been tuning into the commentary around it afterwards. We're trying not to dip our toes into repeating content of other people to directly quote anyone or anything, but I've noticed a lot of people talking about how much of a ripper game it was, and I think in terms of the way it finished and the way it ran out, it was pretty exciting. Like, it was certainly engaging the whole time, but it was an odd, like, an odd kind of arm wrestle that it just didn't feel to me like there was a lot of traditional AFL momentum going on. You know, when the dogs managed to, bite back a
You're
couple
going
of
to
times.
annoy all the analysts here, Sam, with your use of the word momentum. You're going to annoy a lot of people here on YouTube.
Think that particular game. See, now they've got their case study for when there is no momentum. Like, I think, I don't know. There's been a lot of takes of like, oh, the Dogs will be spewing that they missed that one. The Dogs will be spewing they couldn't win that one. Blah blah blah. And that kind of to me is, I mean, it's that kind of to me is like, tell me you only watched the last quarter without telling me you only watched the last quarter. Like,
Sure.
yeah, like it's a little bit. I don't think it's on balance for the whole game. And I think it's good that we're recording this on what is it, Monday night after I've worked an 8-hour shift and I've knocked off at 8:30 to drive home, because I think my passion has subsided to a more acceptable level. I think had we recorded this the night of or the day after, I think I would have been a little bit more fired up about a lot of it. But it was just odd. I thought my take on it really was that there was a sheer weight of numbers in a lot of areas of the Dogs that we know about, but for the most part, the Cats controlled the game. Again, not in a real momentum heavy kind of way, but I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but apart from obviously the last 5 minutes of puckering, uh, I didn't really feel a lot of um panic. Like, it felt to me like everything was going most of the way according to plan. We talked in the preview. One of the things I mentioned was the way that as long as we could convert, we're going to let some scrappy goals through. They're going to beat us in the midfield numbers by at least a portion. As long as we can kind of outscore them, then we'll be right. And that to me is kind of what happened. I think they got some goals that I wouldn't have liked them to get, just from in terms of sometimes when especially late in the game when our structure was starting to fade a little bit. And also I think we were pretty iffy with our inside 50 conversion. But beyond that, it felt to me like the Cats were pretty much sort of controlling a lot of that game, and the Dogs just kept really biting back towards the end of each quarter. And credit to them, they really stayed in, and they could have won it. Like, I'm not saying they couldn't have won it. They obviously, if you watch the game, they could have won that. But yeah, I just felt like in general, despite some of the sheer weight of numbers the Dogs had in very specific areas, I think it was a pretty convincing kind of performance from a somewhat depleted Cats side, especially the midfield, as Johnny will discuss.
Yeah, especially that midfield group, as it's well known. No Dangerfield for one more week, most likely. I don't think he's going to be playing against North Melbourne. Give him another week off. No Cam Guthrie still for a bit, and yeah, it's like the new guys stepping up, taking on a leading role in that midfield, with only Reece Stanley and Mitch Duncan to really give that experience support in that midfield group. I thought they performed exceptionally well, and also a really good case in point in why Reece Stanley was brought back in, because he really helped in that rucking area and around the ground. Just his athleticism really helped the Cats not get on top, but help control the Bulldogs. Like, if you look at the stats, the Dogs absolutely dominated the centre clearances, everything around that sort of midfield area, which I don't think is a surprise. Got Liberatore, Bondimatali, and Trelaw, all big, ball winners. But apart from that, I think the Cats still held their own really well against a really high class, midfield group and can hold their heads high. And they're going to come away learning a lot from the good players, and also knowing that when it comes to the time to stand up, they stood up really exceptionally well, and they've performed like some of the stuff they were able to do. Won that game for the Cats, especially Parfitt. I think some of those extra efforts Parfitt put in, like that tackle that he did while was on his back after he just tackled another Bulldogs to the ground, just with that extra effort in, really exemplified what the Cats are about. It's not about the individuals. It's not about getting Tanner Bruhn the most touches or Jai Clark the most touches or getting out to Duncan to get it inside 50. It's just about, let's stop this Bulldogs midfield, and then whoever's on the outside, let's just get it to them. Doesn't matter who, we'll get it to someone else, and we'll go inside 50. And when it works exceptionally well. Like some of those ball movements by the Cats from defence through the midfield into attack was just exhilarating, just amazing to watch. And also from the centre, like some of the stuff Tanner Bruhn was able to do, Jai Clark, although he didn't have the most impactful game, but still was the fourth game of his career.
Some flashes.
Expect some flashes. There were some flashes. Can't expect him to set the world on fire just yet, but we're seeing what he's capable of. But I think the way Bruhn and Parfitt stood up when it counted was really impressive. And then he had the backup of Atkins, just doing the Atkins things. And then also Mark Blicavs just coming on and just doing what he does exceptionally well. And I think you could really tell when Blitz and Atkins were off, it was just lacking that little extra bit of oomph for the Cats that they needed. So yeah, I think overall the midfield group can be really happy with how it performed. Yeah, they may have got a bit blown out of the water in that last quarter, but kind of expected after a 5-day break. Yeah, they're not going to use that as an excuse, but still, it's 5 days, late game against a pretty, hungry Hawks team to get a first win against the Cats. So after that game, coming to this game, I think they excelled at what they needed to do and got the Cats over the line. And I think that's the main thing. And just to see them grow and experience it without Dangerfield, without Guthrie, is also another massive tick.
And also, like, this is something that I don't think we've mentioned, but I definitely haven't mentioned all year. No Smith. Like,
No Smith as well.
like he, I think it's been really with the Cam Guthrie stuff and that it's been, and in very recent memory we lost, we lost the influence of Selwood, and that's such a huge thing that maybe in comparison the retirement of Smith didn't sort of leave as much of a ripple on our consciousness. But it's only just today that I've sort of went back through his stats and went, oh yeah, he was still playing exceptionally well last year. He was averaging like 22 disposals a game in his last season. Like he's also like a huge loss from that midfield. So it's not just obviously the current injuries, and it's not still just reverberation from Selwood. Like we've also in very, very, like we're only 4 games out from losing Smith. So that's a pretty big one as well.
That is a big one. I think that's where you can see Max Holmes benefiting from Smith's experience of being on the wing and showing him how to play a ring role really well. And you can just see Max Holmes gaining confidence each game. And I think it is knowing that that wing is now his. He's going to come off the half back, control that wing, run through it. And I think you can see a little bit of Smith's game coming into Max Holmes. He's always just hanging around that 50-meter arc, waiting for that quick handball off the guy to have a shot at goal, which he got, which I think was just an exceptionally good goal off one step. but I think you can see the Smith side of Max Holmes' game coming out, and it's exciting. And I agree with a lot of people on Twitter or on Instagram that's going, just pay him what he wants, please. We want to keep him.
I was just going to say, chaps, just based on your discussion there was a couple of little statistical bits and pieces that I just did a bit of digging on. One was, there's been a lot of talk, we've mentioned in the pod and online about, how Geelong's midfield was dominated. Clearances, we lost -9, right? But it was 53-44. There was an insane amount of stoppages in this game. Geelong lose at 53-44. Just for context, that 44 is 7 above our season average. Now, the Dogs is 14 above their season average, but again, we lose that count by 9. Only lost the centre clearances 15-12, the stoppages clearances 38-32. It's not like a game where one side's had 53 clearances and the other team's had 25. It was under double digits in terms of the difference there. And things like contested possession. We're at 136, they're at 139. That's essentially a break even. Uncontested possession, 218 for us, 235 for them. So that's a bit of an advantage. But that number for us is actually up on our season average of 213. A couple of key numbers. We had 72 turnovers. They had 82. And then more specifically looking at some player stats, and I'd be interested to see what you guys, if there's anything you want to springboard in off here. You look at those clearance numbers, the Cats, the Dogs had 6 players go 3 or more clearances on the night. Obviously, Liberatore with 19 of those. Geelong had 9 players with 3 or more clearances. Blixarves had 3, Dempsey, Duncan, Holmes, Zach Toohey, Bose had 4, Myers 4, Tanner Bruin 7, and Brandon Parfitt with 8. And you just build onto that with a bit of a theme of our season about that changed game style. And I know this changed a couple of seasons ago, but I feel like it's even more like exaggerated this year. And Sam brought it up when he talked about we're trying to avoid playing this high possession game where we're having a ton of touches in the middle of the ground. We're looking to move the ball more aggressively and take the midfield contest more out of it and just get it from our most dangerous arc in back 50 to our other most dangerous arc, in and around the forward 50. You look at all of Geelong's major ball winners. Jeremy Cameron, 24 metres gained per disposal. You look at Jack Bowes, over 20 metres gained. Myers, 20 metres gained. Zach Guthrie, over 20 metres gained. Like, pretty much you go down the list, it's hard to find one of Geelong's main ball winners. You probably have to go down to Ollie Dempsey, who is probably our 7th highest disposal getter, before you get to a player who averaged less than 20 metres gained per disposal. And you look at it on the flip side, Treloar for the Dogs, their leading disposal getter, 15 metres gained per disposal. You look at Bond, 18 metres gained per disposal. You look at Libba, 12 metres gained per disposal. Now, I know it's like a difference in style, but I don't think it's right to just say, one team got smashed in clearances, therefore their midfield got shellacked. It was a pretty close game played between 2 pretty good sides, and they play a very different style. And I think we played our way. We executed our plan pretty well. I don't think it can be underrated. The fact that we were coming off a 5-day break in a game that we played in pissing rain, in which there was a 45-minute lightning delay either. So, yeah, I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts. I want to springboard off that little rant, but
yeah, I mean,
good points. You shut me up there.
Well, I mean, but it's like that's the narrative that is formed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like they're also
Yeah,
kind
and I
of,
fell
into
kind of stats that I've been looking at today, specifically the ones around clearances, where it's like, yes, we did get comprehensively we did get beaten in a comprehensive amount of statistical categories, but we didn't get comprehensively beaten in any one of those categories.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And so much of it is like this huge weight of like, if you looked at the numbers from Bontempelli, Treloar, and Libba before the game without a scoreboard or any of the other stats, you just saw those stats. You might think you're in some trouble. And that's why it was such a weird game. And I can understand the narrative that kind of has formed the way people have taken it when you look at a lot of that stuff. But the way it felt watching the game and kind of having an idea, well, having a theoretical idea of what the Cats are trying to achieve, it always felt to me right up until, some patches here and there, and right up until the sort of second half of the last quarter, it felt like we were absolutely achieving that. We were sort of moneyballing those midfield stats where everyone was having having to sort of accumulate the clearances and the disposals amongst themselves rather than put it on anyone's shoulders. And also, I think allowing the other thing that I wanted to mention too defensively, when the Bulldogs had the ball, was until the last quarter how relaxed our off ball movement was, how good our structure was, and how you would see them hooning down wherever they're trying to go. And it was almost stressful how slowly the Cats were were jogging along around them, because that was, and we've talked about this in the past too, and we definitely talked about the development of this in the W last season, is the ability to know where you're going to need to be well before you need to be there, and you don't have to absolutely fang it and bust a gut to get there. You just move, sliding doors across the back line to get into your position. And I feel like if you look at the possession heat maps, the heat map for the Bulldogs to me is way more centralized. They had a lot of that possession in all four quarters, but especially like I think the third quarter, when we actually did our best. But their possession heat map in the third quarter is really centralized in the middle, and obviously they pushed it up in the fourth quarter. It's like I think we spent 75% of the fourth quarter in our back half. I think, but yeah, like it felt to me, and this isn't to take anything away from the Dogs either. Like they did really, really well. I think it's a tip in the a feather in the Cat's hat that we had these superstars who we knew were coming up against, who then also had, some like career highlight performances, and yet we were still able to operate the way we wanted to operate for about 90% of the game in total. So it's not saying the Dogs were terrible and everyone watched the game and misunderstood. The Dogs were better than I even expected them to be, and I still felt like, for the most part, with a couple of tune-ups, I think the Cats could have probably won the game by 3 or 4 goals. Obviously, you don't want to get nitpicky about things, and you don't want to get into the discussion of score reviews and umpiring and all that kind of stuff, because it's a real slippery slope.
That's
but
a
just
great. That's a dark slope you don't want to go down just yet.
Yeah. And we've made a bit of a pact not to discuss umpiring too much, but it's one of those things where as soon as you start complaining about one thing, you've got to allow the other thing and go, well, that's true. You could have had this and we could have that. So it gets a bit useless at the end of the day. But I do think on the value of the total team performance, I think the Dogs did really well, and they may well have stolen it at the death and deserved it on effort. But I think for the sum total of the game, like I think the Cats also probably could have run it out by 3 to 5 goals if the Dogs hadn't have just been as because they were a good bit more efficient with their inside 50s as well, and I think that helped them a lot along the way. Like
they were
10% better or something.
10% better, just roughly 10% better than us. And I think it's as Jay was saying about that midfield battle. I think everyone also got sucked into that last quarter as well, where the Dogs were the most dominant, where they were trying to win that game, and it was just like, oh, let's just figure out those other 3 quarters. Let's focus on this last quarter, which the Dogs did pretty much have in their forward half for most of the game. And as Zach, you're saying, Sam, Cats could have easily won this by 20, 30 points if they just kept the foot on the pedal a little bit longer. But I guess that's another learning curve for young guys of this young midfield. But you've got to keep your foot on the pedal a little bit longer, a little bit stronger throughout the entire quarter. Otherwise, teams with good midfields like the Dogs can fight their way back in and nearly steal it at the end. So yeah, I think, as you're saying, overall, if the Dogs won it, they probably would have deserved it. But at the end of the day, the Cats definitely felt like they were the more rounded, better team throughout the entire contest. And I think stats can back that up a bit as well. With how
I think
well even all the stats were between the Cats players compared to the Dogs players.
it's interesting on I was just the score involvements thing, and this is more just observations as opposed to like trying to point to like a smoking gun of like that's why we won. But I do think it's interesting. If you look at the top 3 disposal getters for each team, and like for me, that represents okay, these are the 3 players who we funneled the ball to the most times. Do you know what I mean? Each team. Ideally, you would want to be getting the ball in the hands of the players you want to impact the game in the biggest way. So the Dogs had those 3 players, Liberatore, Bontempelli, and Treloar, had 107 disposals between them, 25 score involvements, and 3 goal assists. Jeremy Cameron, Jack Bowes, Brian Myers had 72 touches between them, had 29 score involvements and 5 goal assists. They averaged a score involvement every 2.4 disposals, compared to the Dogs' top 3 of 4.3. So again, it's not trying to point to a smoking gun of like this is the reason we won, but I do think it gets back again to what we're talking about, Sambo, a couple of episodes again when you and I flew two-hander, was about the different way in which Geelong is looking to play, which is to maximize its most dangerous pieces as often as possible, and to basically cut out the middleman of having to slowly manufacture scores through a greater number of possessions. It's like how fast can we rebound and score? How aggressively can we open you up and make you pay, and make you worry about moving the ball on us? A little side note too, I would say one of the things I liked most about the Dogs wasn't its midfield, it was its backline. I think there
Yeah.
was a few dark art kind of things in terms of that they had practiced very well how to float those layers of defenders to block leading lanes, which good teams do. But I also thought Buku Khamis was really good. He probably, if I was doing all team votes, as in votes of both sides, he probably would have actually crept into my votes pretty high up. For me, I thought he was really good. But yeah, I just thought that score involvement stat was just interesting. Like I said, more than anything.
It is very interesting.
I think too that the other stat that I think is interesting is the meters gained one, which is kind of like, I think this feeds into what you're saying too, Jake, in terms of the way, not necessarily the amount we're getting the ball or anything like that, but the way we're using the ball. I think we had 6 or 7 of the top 10 players for meters gained on the ground, and I think it was for players, of all the players that got more than 380 meters gained, 8 of them were Cats and 4 of them were Dogs. So I think it's, again, if you're looking at disposals, the numbers look a bit different. Obviously, they've got the 4 of the top 5 disposal getters on the ground. If you go to like the top 10, it's kind of like, I think it's 6-4 their way. But I think with the way, and this goes to that heat map as well, I think the Dogs were maybe working it around a little bit more than the Cats, and the Cats, as we've theorized, are much keener to skip over that no man's land in the middle and get it up as far as possible. And I'm all for it. I think that leads us into talk about I think you've kind of touched on the forward line a little bit, Jake, with the Dogs back line. I think our forward line could have operated better. But again, if you were to tell me that Hawkins is going to have 3 kicks for the night, I might have thought the game would look a little different.
Oh, absolutely.
So again, it's Jerry Cameron 2-4 or something.
2-4.
Yeah, you could kind of get a little bit panicked about it. But I think, sorry, were you going to say something about our forward line, John?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think also with the forward line is the inside 50s when the Cats sort of feeling a bit rushes, still feeling a bit too high, and loopy kicks that just suited the Dogs defenders a bit too much. Were able to come off, as Jake has said, they had that layered defense. Those long loopy kicks really suited their defense style for against the Cats, which obviously they did the homework.
Mm.
And then when you saw when the Cats were very direct, like lowered the eyes, as they say, it was really difficult to stop, and the Cats looked dominant. So I think doing those loopy kicks are good a lot of the times. Like they do bring in the small forward defenders. It does panic, defense when we do have that quick turnover. But I also like to see a bit more of those, more direct kicks to like Hawkins' chest or Cameron's chest or Stengel's or Henry's. Like I think Henry definitely got a lot of direct kicks to him. He either got infringed or just, as Sam said during the night, goes up and then closes his eyes before the ball hits his hands and panics a little bit.
Yeah, it's like
But
his confidence. I mean, he's confident. He backs himself well, but I
yeah,
still think his confidence is still just below his ability, which is crazy
yeah,
with where his ability is. I think actually.
it really is, isn't it? So I think if he takes, and I think like the early game stuff may frustrate him a bit. So he's maybe just overthinking, rushing himself, as he's a low confidence. But I think if he takes mark early on and slots a goal early on, against similar to Hawkins, then they'll start dominating the game. So I think the Cats, yeah, inside 50 just needs a bit of a tidy up. But apart from that, it's like if that's worst case scenario coming out of the game that we won by 4 points, I think the Cats are still in a really good spot early on in the season. They're finding out all these, you know, worries or issues or whatever you like to call them early enough that it's going to be in a fix. They can fix it as they go along. They can train it. They can learn, and it's I feel like it was a really good, as we said in the preview. It was a good test. Felt like a good test, and I think the Cats come away with a lot learned and a knowledge of what to progress on in the future.
Yeah, I think you could say a lot of similar stuff about the back line. I don't think we need to get into it too much. And I know we're getting long in the tooth anyway, but I think, I think we've got, in my opinion, the best back line in the comp. I don't think
Yep.
they necessarily performed like it on the night. I'm not too harsh on any of them. Like I think it was, it was a weird game. I think the Bulldogs have a really potent forward line.
Yep.
So I also don't think it's anything to be ashamed
Tall
of,
as
but
well.
very tall. And I think uh, yeah, there was a few of those. There was a few of those acceptable kind of scrubby goals. Those ones I didn't mind so
Yep.
much. And Waitman breaking away and getting a mark, or
A
several.
couple of
That
great
that
hack
feels
marks
kind of
as
like
well.
yeah, and like the Waitman marks feel within the parameters of acceptable losses with the way we're trying to structure up and the way we're trying to defend. Some of those over the head marks from their tall forwards felt a little bit more like, I think we should be able to disrupt that and cover that a little bit if we were just a little more organized, able to read it just a little bit better. And part of that goes to, like, talking about Tom Hawkins having an off night. Stewart had an off night, and we still did really well. So I think it's still encouraging signs, but I think overall I wouldn't say our defense had their sort of,
Best night.
yeah, and they had moments of their best, but certainly
Yep.
consistently, I don't think they were always as well oiled and structured as they can be.
And even if Stewart was having a bit of a rough night, he still had that game-saving moment where he
Yeah,
just put all his energy into one moment and basically saved the game. And if you're having a rough night and you're still able to do those things, he's a star.
It's very nice to be able to win these games. Like the 4 matches we've won, they've all had elements where we've been challenged, like that second quarter against the Hawks,
Mm.
Where we really just fired, damp squibs, and the Hawks were just kicking everything all of a sudden and running all over the top of us. And then, you get back into it. The Saints, they charge in the last quarter, and we can never quite put them away. But what's encouraging is I think last time when we probably found ourselves in a few of these games, you might lose them. I think about this maybe the game against Sydney, the second time we played them, which ended in a draw, where we'd actually at one point got the game back on our terms, and then Sydney charged at the end, and we really just fluffed it. I don't think I've seen a Geelong side manage an end game situation as badly as that since probably 2021 against the Demons in that final round, where we were 40 whatever points up at one point in that game, and then it just melted away to the point where Gawn ended up with the winning shot on the siren. That felt like it killed our season in a lot of ways. This year, anytime that the Cats have been challenged, they've seen it off and got the job done. So that's pretty encouraging for a team that's been missing some of its key experience at a position that was, that it's weakest, ostensibly, the midfield. You go in hoping you've got Cam Guthrie and he's missing. And then you go over to Adelaide, not only are you missing like Guthrie, then you lose Atkins for the game, you lose Mitch Duncan, etc. So that's been really pleasing. Just one last little stat before we get into some votes. Just the intercepts and intercept marks. It's interesting. I think, I guess I would look at the numbers and sort of think that the Dogs definitely controlled in terms of the intercept marks. They had Liam Jones with 7, Buku Khamis with 6, Taylor Duray with 4. The leading intercept mark for the Cats was Max Holmes with 4. What's interesting then, you flip it though over to intercept possessions, so intercepts that aren't only defined by a mark. Tom Stewart led the game with 10. Then you had Khamis and Jones with 10 and 9. Then it goes Sam De Koning with 9, Max Holmes with 8, Duray 8, Blixarv 7, Liberatore 6. Then you've got a bunch of 5 Cats. So of the top sort of 15 for intercept possessions, 9 of them are Geelong players. So while the Dogs got the better of the marks, 23-14 in terms of intercepts, I reckon if you go back and look at it on the whole in terms of intercept possessions, the Cats would have been right there with them. And I think, it's just as important, whether it's you're intercepting a handball or picking up a loose kick or whatever it might be. I definitely don't think that, well, as the turnover stats show, that there was plus 10. The Dogs had 82. I think we had 72. So, interesting. Anyway, let's do some
tiny little last stat of just the money ball style of it is the contested possessions as well. Dogs slightly beat us in contested possession as well. Obviously, Liberatore had 28. Montpellier had 14. So the Dogs had the top 4. Although the top 2, and then there's there's 4 players that all had 11. So they had the top 2, and then there's a bit of a glut. But of the players that had 7 or above, the Cats had 7 above intercept possessions. The Cats had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players, and the Dogs had 5. So again, they've got the cream of the crop of that stat, the top chunk, and then the sort of mid table is all Cats, and it's nothing. It's again, like you said, Jake, it's not a smoking gun. It's just this is such a repeated pattern here for this game. Is the Dogs have the top 3 or 4 players in a stat, but the Cats have the bulk of the people who achieve that stat. The Cats just have this big mid-table amount of people with an acceptable normal amount. And at the end of the day, it might not get on the highlights reel. It might not get the media talking heads talking as much, but it got us the 4 points.
That's the 4 points.
And just before we
2022, we're flying under that radar, slowly building as everyone talks about Giants, Carlton, Melbourne, Port Adelaide. We'll just keep going on as we do, chugging along, and make them into finals.
The disposal number, you look at all these stats. I think the smoking gun is the fact that this pattern flows into almost every stat. Again, disposals, Treloar, Liberatore, Bontempelli up the top. Then it goes, there's 11 or 12 Cats amongst maybe 3 or 4 Dogs after that. So the spread is important. And just before we get a bunch of sports bros in the YouTube comments going, stop mentioning Moneyball, it's just a lazy term. When you're talking about Moneyball, I know exactly what specific element of Moneyball Sam's talking about. And that is that when they lost Giambi, etc., at the start of the movie, during the book, they were able to try and piecemeal the production of those players together with a greater number of players whose composite parts made up the whole, made up for the production of a player like Giambi. So that's what, that's what we're talking about.
If you take issue with me using the term, please give me another term that's as zingy and sums up what I'm trying to say to a level that Jake and John will understand. understand what I'm trying to say as
Exactly.
moneyballing it, because it's just basically a blanket term for blanketing stats across a larger
Yeah,
number of players than you normally would have to.
yeah.
All right, let's jump
I
into
don't see a
some
problem with it.
votes. Chapel,
Haven't
We'll
seen
call
the
it
movie.
blanket ball.
Blanket ball.
blanket ball.
Blanket balling it.
Gotta love a good
Blanking it.
blanket balling. Let's get into some votes, chaps.
Let's do it.
Sambo, I'll go to you first. You can lead us off with your 1, 2, and 3.
Let me remember who I gave my votes to. No, I'm pretty sure.
That's all right. I can do
you
mine
get-
if you don't have them, but
well, I had a really tough time with it
It
this
was
time.
tough.
Like, and I know I'm sure there would be some conjecture about it. Because it was just one of those games. Again, we moneyballed it, and there was there was a lot of players that did pretty well. I think the top. I'm imagining we would have been pretty unanimous on our three. Like the player that got three. But from memory, I gave Stanley one, right, Jake? I sent him to you, and then I went, all right, I'll forget about that
yes.
now.
I've got
I
him
guess
here.
Stanley one. Was it Parfit next, John?
No, both.
Bose. Oh my god, I forgot about Bose. So Parfit was the one who initially I had, just to get into the how the sausage is made a little bit. I had Parfit at 1, Bose at 2. And I do think that was a way I certainly could have gone. But I really felt with the context, because these are our votes. This isn't the best 3
Mm.
players on the ground necessarily. Context, I can't exist in a vacuum. And the context of certain media knob ends calling out the inclusion of Stanley, and the general dissatisfaction with Stanley, and why would you put him in, blah, 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 blah. I just thought he showed a really, he didn't necessarily light the thing on fire. But I thought he answered that the question of why would you put Stanley in. I think he answered that question. I think he really acquitted himself tremendously well. And to be the number one hit out getter on the ground when the man you're teeing off against is Tim English, I think that's huge. I know the hit outs to advantage maybe weren't as as convincing, blah blah. But I thought he did really well. I really did think that he
It's
acquitted himself well.
it's one of those things that it doesn't really make much sense to me why people are getting so upset that Conway was left out. I just thought, oh, he's a young guy. He's just played his first game for the year, and he's having a 5-day break. Why? And you've got a fresh ruckman who didn't play that Monday, who's ready to go. Why in the hell would you even think about risking Conway when he's had injury issues in the past? Why bother? You've got a fresh ruckman ready to go. Let's do that. It made perfect sense to me. I saw it coming, and I wasn't annoyed. I was like, yeah, that makes 100% perfect sense from a Cat's point of view.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I was really impressed with him. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
I
me too.
think the number 2 was Jack Bowes. I think he's just he's looking like a really impressive player. Like he's one of those ones who, like, I feel like the last time we saw him, I was kind of like, I don't really know where he fits. I don't really know what he brings. And yeah, I thought he really lit it up every time he kind of went near it. He did some pretty impressive stuff, but he also just did those little mundane things tremendously well. And my 3 were to our best midfielder of the night, Jeremy Cameron.
I love a big
No,
winger that can sneak forward for six
I know, yeah.
scoring shots. Chaps, it's good.
It's a bit crazy.
I'll
Isn't it?
just rip through mine real quick, and I'll sort of just let you guys do the expansion stuff. Brandon Parfit with 1 vote, 2 votes for Jack Bowes, 3 votes for the best winger in the game, Jeremy Cameron. Johnny.
Mine are exactly the same as Sam. 1 to Reece Stanley, Bowes, 2, and Jeremy Cameron, 3.
Yeah. And it wasn't just Jeremy Cameron either, like his forward stuff, like he's involved in the scores. There were a couple of times where I was like, shit, we need a really relieving mark here. And it was Cameron invariably who
Yeah.
seemed to be able to, just have that
just
calming
everywhere.
presence, which was, it was
Yeah, in
awesome.
fact,
Defense,
Just before we,
he almost brought some Smith-like qualities.
I
Mm,
just like the way he
definitely.
moves around that ground. Just how he just lopes around, and before you
Roam.
know it, he's run
So good.
50 meters.
Yeah. Well, he also takes out our round 4 best player, as voted by all 5 members of the Hoops crew who vote. The Hoopies. So it was Jeremy Cameron with 13 votes. Jack Bowes in second place with 7. Tyson Stengel with 4. Brian Myers with 3. Reece Stanley 2. Just before we get out of here, chaps, I wanted to bring some attention to. I meant to do this during the episode, like the middle part of the episode, but I want to get it in because I really like this. This graph, this stats table from the Back Pocket, and you need to go and follow the Back Pocket on Twitter. They are at the Back Pocket AU over on Twitter. Now their Twitter bio is Who Defends the Defenders. This is a podcast dedicated to defending the defenders, the backmen, highlighting the work of defensive players in the game. But they put out this great table, which was their rankings, statistical rankings of basically the backlines, the defensive quality of the teams through the first 4 rounds of the season. I thought it was really interesting. Geelong and the Western Bulldogs are ranked sides 1 and 2 through 4 weeks. If you go over onto their Twitter, they've got a great explanation of how the points in the ranking table are achieved. But there's some nice little bits to pick out here. Contested defensive one-on-ones lost. There's only two other teams in the competition who have lost fewer defensive one-on-one contests than the Cats. They are Port Adelaide and the Gold Coast. Geelong have only lost 16% of their contested defensive one-on-ones. Another one that I liked was the marks conceded inside 50. Geelong have only conceded a mark inside 50 on 17.4% of entries. Again, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 teams with a better percentage than that. So just a couple of numbers I really liked in that. And as I said, I just wanted to highlight their work because I've been enjoying engaging with the Back Pocket over on Twitter. They do good stuff. And I thought this table was good. I'm interested to track it. They did put up how this table would have looked at the end of the home and away season last year, and the Cats would have been ranked in the bottom sort of 4 or 5 teams. So it's pretty clear that we made the right move to move on from Asava Radaglia. And I mean, sorry, no, it's pretty clear that just the team defense has improved, I think, in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas. So shots fired, and it will be marked behind the goal line. That's it for this
or spoilt on the goal line.
Public part of the show. That's all.
Your own goal line.
Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. Really appreciate it. We're going to go over now. Now, we said we'd do, solid 30 to 35 minutes for the public part, an extra 15 or 20.
Yep. And you got an extra 50
minutes.
It's extra 10. It's 10.
Yeah.
Quick, 10 before we get to 50. We'll round it down.
All right. So if you want to come over with us and do the month in review over on Patreon, remember you can start a 7-day free trial on the Hoops Crew Patreon page. So go and do that. Get that extra stuff in ya. All right, we'll be back with a preview of Cats v North Melbourne in a few days' time. Make sure you go on over, check all the other stuff out on the Hoops Crew YouTube and on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, go Cats!
Go Cats!
Go Cats!